Okay, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm very pleased to have with me as my guest Darren Abernethy, who's a partner at Greenberg Traurig. Darren, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Richard. It's great to be here. I appreciate you having me. I've tuned in to the show in the past, and I also heard glowing things about you from my boss, mentor, and friend, Gretchen Ramos, with whom
Oh,
you collaborated years ago. So it's great to be here, and I appreciate it.
oh, that's fantastic. Well, that's always nice to hear. You've got one of the more interesting practices. I want to get to all that, but maybe you can take me back a little bit into history and tell me why you went to law school in the first place.
Sure. Well, I don't know if I can trace it to one single moment, but one thing that does stick in my brain was hearing as a very young child, my Italian American grandfather saying to my mother that he always says, "Yeah, but," and so he's going to become a lawyer because of that. I guess I was always questioning whatever was said, or I don't know, but that's what was sort of commonly said about, and I think that maybe implanted the seed of, well, maybe I would want to become a lawyer, and
Oh,
so. Growing up, I also sort of had a natural interest or proclivity for sort of social studies, government, politics, things like that. And so that was a natural fit. And then, you go through school, went to college. I ended up majoring in political science and actually majoring in political science and French. My mother was a French teacher, and I think that inculcated into my twin sister and I at a young age, like love for, French language or other cultures, etc. So really what I thought that I would become, or what I wanted to become actually, was even through college, was the ambassador to France, believe it or not. I thought that would be just an amazing position that sits in two different cultures and is very important strategically, et cetera. I think generally speaking, that is either if you have a career in the foreign service or you're a big donor to a presidential campaign. So, those didn't seem immediately availing to me. But I did finish school and had a year after college where I thought, well, let me just make sure the practice of the law is something that I definitely want to do and consider law school. So I worked for a year at Skadden Arps in Washington, D.C. Great experience as a legal assistant there in the interim year after college. Really enjoyed it and thought, yeah, law school is for me. So I went to law school and also had a great experience. It was very intellectually, stimulating. We had some great professors. It was historical law school. It was the College of William and Mary, the Marshall Wythe School of Law. They argued the longest continually running law school in the country, even older than Harvard, where there was a break. Great. Thomas Jefferson was a student there. So citizen lawyer, the idea of being a citizen lawyer was also very much hammered into us as students there. And so that was great. And then, I could stop anywhere, but that was up going through becoming a lawyer, and then what I did after.
yeah. Well, tell me, my next question was basically then how did you figure out what kind of lawyer you wanted to be? Sounds like you enjoyed law school, you wanted to be a lawyer, but usually when people start law school, they have a different idea of what kind of lawyer they want to be than where they end up.
I think that's true. Or I think maybe, truth be told, I didn't know what kind of lawyer I wanted to be while I was in law school. I really did like the idea of sampling different areas. And so, of course, we all have to take certain required classes for law school, as you well know, torts and civ pro and property law and crim law, et cetera, civil procedure, civ pro. But I also used that time to really kind of sample a bit and take mediation classes and take a secure transactions class and take things like that to figure out, corporations. Like, do I want to be a corporate lawyer? Do I want to be a litigator? I do like, sort of speaking or trying to think on my feet. Maybe that would be a good fit.
Yeah.
I did a summer at the interning at the Office of Chief Counsel for the Internal Revenue Service. And then that was after my first year. And after my second year, I was a summer associate at a big law firm that had an office in Washington, D.C. and was a telecommunications focused law firm. Not focused. It was everything under the sun, but one of the named partners was the former chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. And so what I was tapped to do that summer, and what I ultimately did, because I received an offer to come back and stayed there into my sixth year, was telecom law. So I became a telecommunications lawyer at first, which is to say, working with companies on complying with FCC and state public utility commission requirements, rate deregulation, a lot of spectrum issues for companies that wanted to license wireless spectrum to be able to communicate, and do satellite work and all sorts of interesting things, wireless, cell phone service, taxi cab operators, talking to the central command, all these different things, which, was a new area, a fascinating area, one that required me to learn a lot, on the fly. And I know from watching other of your episodes in the past, one of the things you sometimes ask folks is, what advice would you give to, new lawyers or law students or young people? I would say if you're interested in being a lawyer, a really important trait to have is the desire and the ability to self-educate. You really have to be able to learn new areas, new twists pretty quickly and pretty often. And that was my experience with telecom. Was all right, this is what we're doing, and I need to now learn these frameworks and how they work, and who are the major parties. What are their interests? You'd be surprised, and maybe this spans all industries, I don't know, but at least in that industry, sometimes the more things change, the more things stay the same. And some of the arguments that you had, policy-wise, even 20 years ago, maybe in a different form, but they exist, today. So it was great to ramp up. I loved the area, and there were elements of it that sort of the entry seeds for data privacy. There was things like CPNI, customer proprietary network information, that you have, sort of filings you have to make with the FCC. There's sort of geolocation matters in federal cyber stalking legislation that we helped review or advise companies on, or try to help influence, and different areas that involve privacy. And even though that wasn't by any means the focus of my practice at that time, and we're talking here in the mid to late 2000s, the aughts, data privacy, which is what we're ultimately getting to here, was not a distinct area that law firms had. It wasn't a practice group. Even for the firm I was at, which was a large, well-respected firm, there was literally one person at the time across the firm who answered privacy questions, and she was excellent. She's still going these days. I'll say her name, Cynthia LaRose. A wonderful attorney and sharp mind, and great leader in this space. But it wasn't something that was broadly available, and I sort of saw that, and I saw the tea leaves around 2012, 2013, thinking maybe this is something that actually I am even more interested in than telecom. I just like the idea of there's information that is collected, whether you are collecting it from your customers, your employees, whatever. And with that information comes both responsibility and opportunity. There are things that, on the one hand, you want to do right by your customers, to be upfront, to disclose things, but also then it provides insights about who should we partner with as an organization, or are there opportunities to monetize or derive richer insights about our customer base, from the information they provide us. And so that started turning me on to the idea. I discovered there was something called the International Association of Privacy Professionals, the IAPP, which is the largest sort of member organization for privacy pros and privacy lawyers. And I got sort of synced up with them. I started taking their certification exams on my free time at my own expense. And I loved it. I never looked back. So around, I guess it would be 2013, 2014, where we had the Edward Snowden revelations with the NSA and that program. And that, even though I was already, started doing privacy at that time, privacy law at that time, that led to an exponential increase in interest for just people, for citizens, for companies, for many others, that really led to, I won't call it a greenfield industry or practice group in law firms, but within 2 to 3 years, every major law firm had a data privacy and cybersecurity practice group. And, I was at that point, because I was fairly early to it, I was on the initial wave of it and never looked back. That's what I wanted to do. And I've learned to never say never or prognosticate too far in the future, but my feeling right now, at least, is that this is what I will do for the rest of my career.
Yeah, interesting. So do you consider yourself now first and foremost a privacy lawyer, or you still do a lot of FCC work, or what niche of privacy have you kind of carved out for yourself now?
Certainly. To answer the latter part first, I don't consider myself an FCC or telecom lawyer anymore. I leave that to the professionals, because that is its own body of law and administrative law too. I guess I didn't even mention that earlier. It was a cool aspect of FCC telecom law, was because it's admin law, it's a sort of hybrid litigation and in some ways transactional or advocacy approach. So there's policy drafting, but sometimes you would go to present before a judge, your case, or before a commission. So that was a cool aspect of it. But because I'm not current in there anymore, I leave it to the experts. I still keep up a little bit and have conversations, but I don't advise on it. I do consider myself a data privacy attorney now. And that is in its own way sort of an overarching umbrella, because a lot falls under privacy. And that's actually one of the things that I really like about this field is you've got any given day, I could be working on, privacy, data security in mergers and acquisitions and advising and negotiating, working with, representations and warranties, insurance underwriters, doing diligence, et cetera. Next, an hour later, I'll be doing privacy compliance work, which is to say a company comes and says, hey, we're thinking about building this new product or entering this new market or doing this new use with data that we already collected from customers in the past. Can we do this? What do you think? What would be implicated, et cetera? And then working with them to identify, what are potentially applicable laws here? What is your business model? What are you trying to do? What's the current system? And how could we think about tweaking this in a business enabling way so that you can do what you want to do, but you do so, by transparently informing or where necessary, where appropriate, getting consent from people, things of that nature. So it's a privacy compliance element with different laws that we have in Europe and the US and in other places, other major jurisdictions like China and Brazil and Japan, parts of Africa, Northern Europe, Latin America, Canada, all over. We work with local counsel in places too to validate work if we don't have an office there, although GT is one of the, Greenberg Traurig is one of the largest firms in the world. So we do have offices in a lot of different places. But yeah, privacy compliance, M&A. In my case, sort of one of the specializations, I guess you'd say, I've developed over the years is in relation to digital advertising and advertising technology. And so that means, working with companies really throughout the advertising ecosystem that provides for the free services that we enjoy with the internet. That is all essentially monetized through advertising or advertising adjacent activities. And so I work with companies throughout that whole really that ecosystem, whether they're publishers, whether they're technology layers like demand side platforms or supply side platforms, advertisers themselves, and others in between that are part of this amazing and elegant just system where when you go to a website or a mobile application, within the blink of an eye, literally the time it takes you to blink, there is a real-time bidding auction that takes place based on information inferred or known about your browser, not even you per se, there's always once removed, your browser, to infer potential interest, to allow people to bid on who will have the opportunity to show you their advertisement in a slot on that website or that mobile application. And the way it works, the processing that goes on, the number of parties involved, the speed with which it happens, it's really quite astounding and amazing. And that is the area that I've been drawn to the most, I think, in the last 10 years or more in privacy law, is just like, hey, this is an interesting system and one that is always evolving. So as you're probably aware, Rich, you've seen some of the headlines, some of the major browsers have already deprecated their support for third-party cookies, and the largest browser out there, Chrome, will be doing so as well, but the deadline keeps getting pushed back. So a lot of conversations with companies about, hey, if Chrome browser or other browsers don't support third-party cookies, that's going to change, significantly the way that we do advertising, the way that we, retarget folks or do outreach, et cetera. What should we do? What are privacy compliant solutions, or how should we be thinking about this? And so to my earlier point about kind of education process relearning, you have to kind of stay current on these things, work, with great stakeholders, partners, others, just colleagues, and a lot of different companies, and it's exciting and never a dull moment. I can say that in privacy law.
Interesting. Now, it looks like from your background, you actually spent a little bit of time being in-house. Tell me about that experience and what was that like, and how has that helped your private practice?
Absolutely. So first, I was in practice after law school in Washington, D.C. into my 6th year at a firm there on Pennsylvania Avenue. And then, I'd been in D.C. for a while at that point, even before law school. In sort of, I guess you'd call it maybe a fit of manifest destiny, my then girlfriend, now wife, we decided we wanted to kind of relocate from Washington to the Bay Area in San Francisco. And we did. We had an opportunity to do that where a great friend of mine from law school who is he's a few years older and is just a visionary entrepreneur. He started a company and he wanted me to help him help run it, and do things with it. And it was sort of an e-commerce marketing outfit. So went over to San Francisco, learned a lot from him, got to do that, but had the opportunity, where I wanted to do privacy full time. But I wanted to do privacy full time, so I went in-house to a privacy technology vendor, then called Trustee, now called TrustArc. That was just couldn't have been a better experience, because it really was like an incubator lab full of privacy, because they create privacy technology solutions. They have certifications that you would assess companies against in order to get sort of a certification seal, but you look at their privacy program and you work very closely with the stakeholders over there. So I got to touch so many different businesses, large and small, Fortune 50 to startups, and really have deep conversations about their business model, the platforms they use, their innovative things they do with data collection and usage, et cetera. And that was really a fantastic experience. And I moved on to senior counsel role at that company, and then I was in a position to kind of be the lead from a product and just sort of public facing standpoint for that company's digital advertising programs, and working with the Digital Advertising Alliance and the Interactive Advertising Bureaus and others in the US and Europe, trade groups involving ad tech and advertising. And so I got very kind of closely aligned with them, and from a product standpoint, from a policy standpoint, really got to increase my knowledge, sort of join, if you will, kind of the privacy speaking circuit on webinars and in-person sessions and things like that. And it was just truly fantastic. And it was through that I actually had an opportunity to speak on a panel with, I mentioned Gretchen earlier, and that kind of, spurred in me, as much as I love being, also dedicating my time to one company to try to grow them and make them as strong as they could be. The thing about TrustArc was, we used to eat our dog food. So we build these products for others, but we would use them too. So we were responsible also for shoring up our own privacy program using our stuff, so that we could learn how it worked and iterate that way. But my heart of hearts was actually in private practice, and I missed it, and I wanted to go back. And so I worked, sort of the conversation continued with Gretchen after our conference together, and I ended up back here at Greenberg Traurig, and I haven't looked back since, and I've really enjoyed it. And now privacy law is 100% of the time, almost 100% of the year. We have some days off, but no, I'm just kidding. You know how it is.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Darren, it's been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time. I've interviewed obviously a lot of people, and I can always tell when somebody really loves what they do, and that was really apparent today. So I'm really happy and appreciate you taking the time to share your story with me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having these conversations, Richard. I'll continue to be a fan, and have a great rest of your day.
This is Richard Hsu and Darren Abernethy. Thanks.